things just took a surprising turn as one of the standouts from the Celtics Summer League is said to still have interest in this team. And with Brad Stevens creating an open roster spot over these last couple of days, the option still remains out there for Charles Bassey to come fill in and be another center in this depleted rotation to help out Joe Mazzulla and this roster. So what could this mean for Bassey and for the Celtics, who do have that open roster spot? Well, we'll be breaking down all of that and more on this latest episode of Celtics Digest. I'm your host, Bruce Veliz, and I want to say thank you guys so much for showing your love and support here on the channel. Patrick and I really do appreciate all the love and support you guys have been showing down below in the comment section. So let us know your thoughts on a potential Charles Bassey reunion here in Boston, and if you guys would like the Celtics to add him with that 15th and final roster spot, or you would like the Celtics to do some other things or potentially even keep that roster spot open. But without further ado, let's dive in. Let's get into the news at hand today. Make sure to grab that snack and let's get into it. This is an interesting topic to be diving in and exploring, as Bassey had a weird stint with the Boston Celtics in Summer League. Patrick and I referred to him as the mystery man, as he just, was seen at Celtics training camp a couple of days before the Summer League, wound it up just going with the team to Summer League, playing with the team as just a random addition. No one really knew he was going to be on the roster. He wasn't announced on their Summer League roster, had some good performances, and then mysteriously disappeared as he did not finish out the Summer League with the Boston Celtics. But from this latest article, courtesy of Noah Dalzell from Celtics blog, does some writing for Hardwood Houdini as well, also works for CLNS Media. She talked about an article that she found out where she heard from sources that tell her that Charles Bassey is not currently planning on going overseas, despite multiple outlets indicating otherwise. Bassey still sees the Celtics as an ideal destination and is drawn to the team culture of sustained winning. And if we want to dive into this article here from Noah from Celtics blog, we can see that the Celtics Summer League standout center Charles Bassey is not planning on playing overseas next season, sources told Celtics blog. Multiple outlets previously reported that he was seriously considering signing with the Serbian club Partizan Belgrade. I'm sorry if I've mispronounced that, but he currently plans to play in the NBA next season. And this is something that we discussed when analyzing Charles Bassey, when looking at his play in the Summer League. He could be, someone that comes in, stands out with him in the Summer League, and then earns a guaranteed roster spot, because like we mentioned, this center room is very dire in need of just any rotational depth at this point, with losing Kristaps Porziņģis, with losing Luke Kornet, and still having the uncertainty of not having Al Horford back on this roster. Bassey would especially love to sign with the Boston Celtics as well, as if this opportunity presented itself, sources said, as how realistic that remains to still be seen for Charles Bassey. We do know the Celtics do have that open roster spot, like I mentioned, but most teams like to go into the season with that open roster spot for flexibility with trades and the ability to make those trades throughout the year. And with the Celtics still having some weird situations with their salary cap and still having the flexibility and names discussed of still being involved in trades, I do think that the Celtics will be very wary in signing a guy in Charles Bassey. Even if they do sign him and bring him onto this roster, it might not be until after training camp, or potentially after the preseason, once they kind of evaluate what they really have with their roster. Maybe they do try to wait these 60-day waiting period of trying to aggregate Anthony Simons and Georges Niang in deals and try to find a deal where they can send both of those guys out and have more flexibility to where they can bring Charles Bassey and bring in some of these other guys via trade. But nonetheless, today's episode is about Bassey and what he could bring for the Celtics. Like I mentioned, and Noah displayed here, he was fantastic in the Celtics Summer League this year at 24 years old. He was a consistent player for the team, averaging 15.3 points and 11 rebounds per game, where he shot almost 71% from the field across 3 games, 2 of which were wins. Now, Bassey, like I mentioned, did not play in the final 2 games for the Boston Celtics because it was a weird stipulation where he is only agreed to play with the team with 3 games. I don't necessarily know why, but that's kind of where it happened. Bassey explained after his Summer League debut that he was drawn to joining the Celtics, citing his impressions of the players and coaches of "it's just the culture," saying that Bassey, who had only played for 1 playoff team in 4 NBA seasons, is said to be very attracted to the team's winning record, saying they go to the playoffs every year, so obviously just learning from those guys, it's great for me. I went to the playoffs 1 time, but it's been good, man. It's just going to learn a lot from those guys. And Summer League head coach Matt Reynolds also said that Bassey joined the team right before the first day of training camp. Like I mentioned, he just shockingly just kind of showed up randomly at practice and was just playing with the team, and that he was able to participate in to the 5 portion of the second day of camp. Just saying, it was clear that this guy can make an impact on the game, and you could see that throughout the course of his game today. Reynolds shared after he had gotten 14 points, 11 rebounds, and 2 blocks in just 18 minutes. He was absolutely huge for us. And in those games, he struggled a little bit alongside a guy in Kel'el Ware, but in 2 of those 3 games where Bassey was able to make his imprint, he really did stand out for this Summer League Celtics team. But Bassey, obviously, across his NBA tenure, hasn't looked the brightest, and that's why he's kind of been put in these situations. He wasn't brought back by the San Antonio Spurs. They went and filled up more depth with Luke Kornet, with Kelly Olynyk behind Victor Wembanyama, because unfortunately for Charles Bassey, he hasn't been able to stay healthy for a lot of his career. He was the 53rd pick by the 76ers in 2021, where he's played 4 seasons where he's only appeared in 113 games. His rookie year he spent in Philadelphia and then played for San Antonio for the last 3 seasons, where last season with the Spurs he only appeared in 36 games before suffering an injury mid-season. But he had a strong first half of the season, averaging 4.4 points, 4.2 rebounds, and only 10.4 minutes per game. It's hard to know, obviously, what that would be scaled up compared to Bassey, but when looking at per 36 numbers, if you take that, Bassey averaged 15.1 points, 14.6 rebounds, and 2.9 blocks per 36 minutes last season. And for reference to Neemias Queta, who would likely be the Celtics starting center next year, provided by Noah, he averaged a little bit less than that, 12.9 points, 9.8 rebounds, and 1.6 blocks per 36 minutes last year. Obviously, it's not a perfect comparison. Obviously, Charles Bassey has a little bit more injury concerns, and per 36 numbers, even though they do show you what that player would represent there on the court 100% if they were in those minutes, who knows if Charles Bassey is going to be able to play to that level of effectiveness for all 36 minutes. Obviously, in some smaller sample sizes as a backup big, he's going to look more dominant, but if he's thrusted into this starting role and is predicted to be this dominant starting center for the Celtics, what will those numbers really actually represent? It may not be representative of these 15 points, because comparing of his stats to those minutes, it could be a little bit different. But obviously, his rim rebounding, his rim protection have been Bassey's strengths, and those are something that the Celtics could definitely value this season. With losing Kristaps Porziņģis, one of their top-tier rim protectors, with losing Luke Kornet, one of their top-tier rebounders and rim deterrents, a guy like Charles Bassey could be that disruptor in this front court. And we've seen with Neemias Queta, he can be that solid defensive backup big as well, but he still has some learning grooves. I do think he will get better going into this season, but I don't think necessarily he screams top-tier starting center in the league to me. So I do think bringing Bassey for that competition, someone who replicates a very similar playing style and build to a guy like Neemias Queta in that front court here, you can have someone like Charles Bassey and Neemias Queta trying to bring the best out of each other, and maybe that makes one of them really stand out, or it gives you 2 quality, pretty solid rim protecting defensive big men in this rotation that you can kind of interchange depending on if one of them is injured, if one of them is in foul trouble. It gives you that flexibility within Joe Mazzulla's offense. Now, league sources say there is some concern regarding Bassey's injury history. Obviously, the 6'10" center suffered a fracture in his left patella in 2023 and later tore his ACL, where he missed the second half of and then he missed the second half of last season with an MCL injury. But both Bassey played on both nights in a back-to-back with the Celtics last month and is now fully cleared for NBA action. It still remains to be whether the Celtics will end up having the cap space or sufficient interest to sign Bassey even with that open roster spot, but contrary to previous reports, sources do say that Bassey is currently not planning on playing in Europe next season, and Boston is a destination he is particularly fond of. And that's really what we have to look at for this today. Like I mentioned, Charles Bassey, someone that the Celtics not necessarily are saying they're going to swoop up and take him as their last roster spot, but could show some potential interest in him. Bassey still has interest with the Celtics, maybe if it's not with the Celtics, with another NBA franchise. He does not want to go back to go overseas, and that's something that we're seeing with a lot of these kind of players, right? Guys that have either not really panned out on their rookie scale deals or had some injuries down the line, maybe some second round picks. These are the guys that teams take those flyers on, and if they don't really stick in the NBA after 1 to 2 destinations, they end up going overseas. And this is where Bassey's kind of put into this decision. We've seen it with Lonnie Walker, kind of dating back to last season and this year. We've even looked at guys like Lamar Stevens, who are ex-Boston Celtics, that have kind of been in this kind of, I guess, grouping where now they're going to play overseas. O'Shea Brissett kind of falls into that. Charles Bassey could be another one of those type of players or archetypes that can go overseas and still get some reputable playing time, or could still compete for a spot in the NBA. I don't blame him if he wants to come to the Celtics. The Celtics, like you mentioned, give him a solid role to kind of shine bright and kind of look his best. But not only that, they have those playoff winners, they have that experience, and if Bassey wants to still be an NBA player and be a winner, this could be the team to do so. Who's to say if Charles Bassey doesn't come to the Celtics, plays a solid role on this team, that he does fit in well. He does look like a solid backup center, and the Celtics get a pretty solid, backup center for their long-term future while still trying to figure out what their destination is with their starting center to then really reconstruct this team around Jayson Tatum. This is the year for the Celtics to take kind of these flyers, trying to figure out who's really going to stick and who could be these other potential role players, kind of building off of those guys like Peyton Pritchard, Sam Hauser, and Luke Cornett, and trying to identify those guys. That's why they took the flyers on Josh Minott, Luka Garza, and maybe they'll do that with Charles Bassey as well. Personally, I like Charles Bassey. I do think he'd be very viable for the Celtics to bring in. I don't necessarily know if they have a training camp deal left to give him, but if they did, I would not be shocked if he was back in Boston's training camp competing, trying to prove to them that he can be that final roster spot. The only difference when looking at Bassey compared to Lonnie Walker last year competing for this last roster spot was obviously last year the Celtics were in the second apron, and adding Lonnie Walker would really screw their finances. With the Celtics adding a guy like Charles Bassey, it will put them back into the second apron here, as they would then have 15 guys on the roster, and with waiving Jayson be back over into that limit. But it would then still have them the ability to either wait the 60 days to either aggregate Simons or Niang in trades, or potentially use those contracts or other ones at the trade deadline to utilize to get out of the second apron to then get away those hindrances. So I don't think it's as pain-pilling as it was with signing Lonnie Walker, but it also could be a reason why Brad says, I'd rather keep the flexibility and all options open on the trade market throughout the season, because we don't know how our roster is going to look by the end of the year. So ultimately, that's what I have to say about Charles Bassey and the Boston Celtics. Let me know your thoughts down below in the comment section, what you guys ultimately think about this move. If you guys would like to come on this Celtics team, if you guys would like to keep this roster spot open, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Have a great rest of your day, and go Boston Celtics.